listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, IELTS students. In this tutorial, we're going to look at how to make comparisons in the IELTS Speaking exam. We're going to focus particularly on part 3. This is where you're expected to engage in a deeper discussion and express opinions. Not necessarily your personal opinions, but express societal opinions and views on various topics. Before we get started, let me just very briefly tell you who I am if this is your first time listening. My name is Ben Worthington. I'm from the north of England. I've lived outside of the UK for the last 20 years, and I recently came back to my homeland because of family reasons. Now, I started IELTS podcast well over 10 years ago, probably longer. And the reason was because I was a struggling English tutor, and students were coming to me and they were like, how do I do this task 2 essay? How do I prepare for the IELTS? And I was honestly clueless. And I jumped in and I started doing some research, but I didn't get any answers or decent answers. You know, the amount of times I found the advice, practice, practice, practice. And I was like, this is useless, absolutely useless. Or to get a band 7, write an essay with no mistakes and make sure that it's in academic English. Oh, wow, thanks. That's very, very useful. So what I did is I started interviewing all the experts and other ex-IELTS examiners, linguistic experts, and recording those interviews in order to basically capture what was being taught. And then I would teach my students and test it on them. If it worked, I put it into our online courses. And then fast forward to today, we've got the AI essay checker. I'm talking about using tools, not information. And here we are. We're like the number one AI essay checking site online. We've got amazing courses. We've got success stories. And we're just moving forward. And we're here just to make sure that you pass. So if you're struggling, if you're nervous, then you're in the right place because we're going to help you get band 7. So let's jump into it. We're looking today at comparisons. We're going to take a top level view, but it is going to be incredibly practical with some typical part 3 questions, some useful sentence structures, some useful grammar features, and in each example, I'm going to give you some advice, some model answers, and it's just going to be a very practical tutorial. Now, before we start, have a think about these questions. These are the questions we're going to be working on today. How do modern communication devices differ from those used in the past? Now, if you're serious about your IELTS preparation, pause this recording and ideally speak your answer. This is an extremely valuable exercise because you can believe and think that, oh, that's an easy question. I'll just talk about mobile phones and fixed line phones. But what you will find is that once you start speaking, once you get started, you might, or you'll probably uncover some gaps in your vocabulary or grammar structures. So it's incredibly valuable for you just to pause and actually speak your answer and then make a note. It's like, oh, how do I make a comparison? Oh, how do I express my opinion on this? Oh, what's the vocabulary for fixed line telephone? I mean, you even heard me. I'm a native English speaker. You even heard me struggle to find. There was that small pause while I was struggling to find the word fixed line telephone. And that's because it's not a word that's even in my vocabulary nowadays because we never use them. It's almost non-existent. So that's the first question. How do modern communication devices differ from those used in the past? Number 2, compare traditional classroom learning with online education. Again, pause the recording and think of your answer. Think of the structure you're going to use. Think of the vocabulary you'll need to answer this effectively. Now, you can do this as well for task 2. In fact, when you sign up to our email list, you get about over 200 task 2 questions sent to you. And the reasoning is exactly the same. You can start building your brain muscles, start building this brain power to think on your feet, to think spontaneously of answers. And if your mind goes blank, then you just jump onto Google, jump online, and you just put the keywords into the question, or paraphrase the question, or even put the question straight in, and you'll find a wealth of different answers and pros and cons and all the rest of it. Take notes. Third question. How have environmental efforts changed over the past few decades? Let's just recap. Number 1, how do modern communication devices differ from those used in the past? 2, compare traditional classroom learning with online education. 3, how have environmental efforts changed over the past few decades? Now, the interesting thing with these is they are inviting you to make a comparison. The first 2 of those questions have how, and we've got like a time frame in there. And then the second question starts with an imperative, compare. It's an order. You've got to compare. So you've got to make a comparison, obviously, for that question. Let's go. Number 1, how have environmental efforts changed over the past few decades? Response. Environmental conservation measures have evolved significantly over the years. While in the past, initiatives mainly focused on raising awareness, nowadays there is a shift towards implementing concrete policies and adopting sustainable practices. Wow, how good is the vocabulary in that answer? Not bad. Now, the interesting thing here is that 1, we've paraphrased the question at the beginning. Environmental conservation measures is basically the same as environmental efforts. And we've put a time frame in there. Instead of past few decades, we said significantly, have evolved significantly over the years. Evolve is a lovely verb to use because it shows like the change in status over, or the change in progress over a period of time. Now, the next part of the answer, while, we start with the comparison. While in the past, that's a beautiful phrase. Memorize that phrase and start incorporating it into your answers. You can even start your sentence off with this. While in the past, start your answer off with this. While in the past, initiatives mainly focused on raising awareness. Now the contrast. Nowadays, there is a shift towards implementing concrete policies and adopting sustainable practices. Now, here we set up the comparison with while, and then we are using the simple past, mainly focused on raising awareness. So simple past, it's the action has ended, and now we've said, and now we bring it up to date and we say, nowadays there is a shift towards implementing concrete policies and adopting sustainable practices. So that was a lovely sentence. It was parallel, which I'll mention in a minute. And yeah, it's a very complete answer. We didn't start with our personal opinion. It's just a general opinion of, like, from a societal level, from a very high level. We didn't say, like, a common mistake is like, my uncle used to work in solar energy, No, it's not personal at all. It's very top level. Next question. By the way, I'm going to go into the grammar points with examples of using the grammar points for the same question. So we're really going to drill into these questions. You're going to pick up a lot of vocabulary and a lot of useful grammar features. Number 2, compare traditional classroom learning with online education. Traditional classroom learning has been the norm for centuries, offering face-to-face interaction and immediate feedback. In contrast, online education provides flexibility and accessibility, allowing students to learn at their own pace and from anywhere in the world. There we go. So we start off, we just jump straight into it, and we use the present perfect. Traditional classroom learning has been the norm for centuries. So it's something that's true in the past and still true to this day. Whereas if we use a simple past, it's obviously ended. And then we've got some great vocabulary, face-to-face interaction, immediate feedback, traditional classroom learning, but that's taken from the question. Next part of the answer. In contrast, as I stressed twice, in contrast, and now we set up the comparison. In contrast, online education provides flexibility and accessibility. So both of those phrases there are parallel. Flexibility and accessibility. They are the same form. If I say online education provides flexible working practices and accessibility, that's okay. But if we use online education provides flexibility and accessibility, it's just got a lovely rhythm to it that is going to help you sound more like a native English speaker. And a high-level native English speaker, because a lot of native English speakers do not use this. They're just completely unaware. And the words that fall out of their mouth, in most cases, in my experience since coming back to the UK, they're hardly aware of that either. Anyway, moving on. Provides flexibility and accessibility, allowing students to learn at their own pace and from anywhere in the world. Just a side note here. I think a lot of native English speakers, or native speakers in general, are unaware of what they are saying. The words are literally falling out of their mouth. And the reason is because they haven't learnt a foreign language, so they've never had to assign so much attention to the words that they use. Whereas us, you and me, we have both learnt foreign languages, so we are completely aware in most cases of what is coming out of our mouth. It gives us a huge advantage when it comes to communication, not only in our own language, but also it's just a skill we've picked up from learning a second language. Next question. How do modern communication devices differ from those used in the past? The technological advancements in communication devices have revolutionized the way we connect with others. While older devices like landline phones, or fixed line phones as I said, were limited to voice communication, modern gadgets such as smartphones offer a plethora of features including video calls, instant messaging, and access to the internet. So again, a similar structure to what we used before. We used the while. Very useful. Other variations could be whereas. Whereas older devices, such as landlines and fax and telegraph, were limited to, or were very limited to either just voice or just paper or even just signals. Whereas modern gadgets, X, Y, Z, and we carry on. There we go. Now, what were the grammar points that we used? Well, one, comparisons in time. So when we're answering, we've got to show, obviously when the question invites us, it's crucial to use the appropriate time expressions and tenses when we're comparing events over different periods of time. Again, how have environmental efforts changed over the past few decades? Environmental efforts have evolved significantly over the past few decades. In the past, initiatives focused primarily on local conservation projects and raising awareness. However, another beautiful little phrase, very handy to show a comparison, a different point of view. However, in recent years, bring it back to the present, in recent years, there has been a shift towards global collaboration and the development of sustainable practices to address pressing environmental issues such as climate change and deforestation. Excellent vocabulary there. But what I want you to focus on is the comparisons in time and the appropriate use of tenses and time expressions. Now, again, let's just drill into comparing with different tenses. Now, depending on the context, comparisons may require the use of various tenses, such as the present, past, or the present perfect, as we noticed before. Let's do it again. Compare traditional classroom learning with online education. Now, we definitely have to use a comparison here with the different time frames. The question orders us to. It's the imperative. Compare traditional classroom learning with online education. Answer. Traditional classroom learning and online education offer distinct learning experiences. In traditional classrooms, students interact face-to-face with teachers and peers, fostering direct communication and immediate feedback. On the other hand, another very useful phrase. On the other hand, whereas, while, these are useful comparison structures and phrases. On the other hand, online education provides, we switched to the present simple, provides flexibility and accessibility. Again, that nice little parallel phrase, allowing students to learn at their own pace and from anywhere with an internet connection. So the answers here are slightly different. I did that just to help you acquire more topic-specific vocabulary, which we all know examiners love. Irregular comparatives. Now, this is something that you do not want to learn. My bad. The next one is the one you do not want to learn. Irregular comparatives. This is where some adjectives have irregular comparative forms. And there's not much of a rule here. It's usually down to just hardcore memorization. So let's go. How do modern communication devices differ from those used in the past? Modern communication devices differ significantly from those used in the past. While older devices like telephones were bulky and limited to voice calls, modern devices such as smartphones are compact and multifunctional, offering features like browsing, video calls, and instant messaging. So the typical examples are good, better, best, bad, worse, worst, little, less, least, much, more, most, far, farther, further, farthest, furthest. These are irregular comparatives and they deviate from the typical pattern of ER and EST. Okay? She is pretty. She is prettier than her friend. She is the prettiest, for example. That's an irregular comparative, a regular adjective structure. Moving on. These are the ones you want to avoid. Double comparatives. This is a common mistake usually for beginners or lower intermediate users of the English language. Let me give you an example. This is where we say more better. It just sounds terrible. And I've even heard native English speakers use the structures, which goes back to what I was saying before, that sometimes the words literally just fall out of the mouth. Let's move on. How have environmental efforts changed over the past few decades? Environmental efforts have become more better. It hurts me to say it. More better coordinated and effective over the past few decades. Initially, initiatives were scattered and lacked cohesive strategies. However, with the advancements in technology and increased awareness, efforts have become more focused and impactful. Okay, so just one blunder on purpose in that sentence. So be aware. If you do catch yourself making a mistake like that, you can rewind and say it correctly, but try to avoid making a habit out of it, because if you're constantly self-correcting, then you're impeding your own communication and you will start to lose points. Next one of my favorites, maintaining parallel structure. This is just a beautiful feature of the English language. And when somebody uses this consciously or even unconsciously, it just adds a little bit of silkiness, a little bit of sophistication to how they speak and write. So when we maintain parallel structures, we ensure the consistency in the sentence structures. This makes it easier to make comparisons, and it adds some clarity and coherence in your speech. So you can see why it's definitely a useful feature. Let's go. Compare traditional classroom learning with online education. In traditional classroom learning, students interact face-to-face with teachers and peers, receive immediate feedback, and engage in group discussions. There we go. It's got that rhythm to it. Students interact face-to-face with teachers and peers, receive immediate feedback, and engage in group discussions. So in that sentence, all the verbs took the same form and were broadly similar length. Interact face-to-face with teachers and peers, receive immediate feedback, and engage in group discussions. On the other hand, online education offers flexibility in scheduling, access to a wide range of resources, and the ability to learn at one's own pace. So both of those sentences were beautifully parallel. Let me just destroy that last sentence to give you a comparison, ironically. On the other hand, online education offers a lot of flexibility in scheduling, access to a wide range of resources, and for the student, they now have the ability to learn at one's own pace. So it's longer, makes it more difficult, but it's just lost the rhythm to it. If you listen to good orators, like good public speakers, they use parallel structures a lot because it just helps with, as I said before, it helps with clarity and coherence, and this is the objective of a public speaker. If you listen to Obama, for example, he has got such a gift with the English language. Don't listen to Trump that much for grammar. I'm not saying he's an idiot. He's incredibly engaging, but he definitely does not use parallel structures that much. But Obama does. Look at maybe some of the speeches by Winston Churchill. There's a famous one, we'll beat them on the beaches, we'll beat them on the land, or something like that. But listen to prominent figures with using the English language, and you will see parallelism when they speak. Also, use this in your writing if you can, and you'll start to see your essays improve as well. Right. As you can see, I'm stumbling towards the end. My brain is tired. It's time to wrap up. Thank you very much for listening. If you are serious about passing the IELTS exam, come over to IELTS Podcast and you'll sign up You'll get a load of resources, including those 200 plus questions sent to your inbox. You'll get access to a whole range of ebooks for free, and you'll be invited to use our AI essay checking tool, which is also free. And you can just move forward and progress and improve your scores with us together. So have a beautiful day. Keep moving. You will get there in the end, and thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.